Have you ever wondered why the absolute smartest people in the room sometimes make the most catastrophic choices? Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to uncover the hidden psychology behind exactly that. We naturally tend to equate a high IQ with flawless logic and perfect decision-making. But as we're about to see, the human brain actually operates under a completely hidden, prehistoric set of rules. I want you to imagine two people standing at a crossroads in life. Over on the left, we've got someone who barely managed to scrape by and pass high school. And on the right, a brilliant, world-renowned scientist armed with multiple advanced degrees, prestigious awards, and an exceptionally high IQ. So who makes the better decision here? Common sense immediately points to the scientist, right? We just assume that raw brain power practically guarantees a better outcome. But reality actually paints a much darker, much more complex, and honestly, almost suspenseful picture about the answer to that question. History is literally filled with shocking examples of this. Some of the world's absolute smartest investors have lost billions of dollars overnight, just because they completely refused to admit they were wrong. We've seen brilliant CEOs actively destroy companies they built from the ground up by totally ignoring obvious warnings. Highly educated doctors routinely fall for really basic financial scams. Even Nobel Prize-winning economists have made catastrophic market choices that left the general public completely baffled. It proves, unequivocally, that raw intelligence alone doesn't control our behavior. So what actually does? Let's dive into Chapter 1, Meet Arjun. To really get to the bottom of this, let's examine a case study by meeting a fictional character named Arjun. Arjun is a calm, logical, highly analytical software engineer. In fact, he's known by all his friends and colleagues as the smartest person in the room. He's the guy everyone goes to for advice. Well, one evening, Arjun stumbles across a new investment opportunity. Now, because he's so analytical, he doesn't just jump in based on emotion. No, he spends hours researching. He analyzes the historical charts, he pores over complex financial reports, he consults expert opinions, and everything points in one direction. He confidently concludes this is going to be huge and drops a substantial amount of his life savings into it. His high intellect actually makes him feel incredibly secure in his choice. And this perfectly illustrates our first mystery. Within week 1, the price of his investment drops, but Arjun isn't worried. He tells himself it's just a temporary market fluctuation. By week 2, it drops again, and his friends begin to panic and sell off their shares. But Arjun, he stubbornly holds on, thinking, look, I've done the math, I've read the reports, I am smarter than the crowd. Fast forward a few months, and he has suffered a total, devastating loss. So we have to ask ourselves, did Arjun suddenly lose his high IQ? Did his cognitive abilities just vanish overnight? Obviously not. His brain simply fell into a psychological trap, a series of hidden blind spots that actually affect almost every single human being on Earth, regardless of how incredibly smart they might be. Which brings us to Chapter 2, the prehistoric brain. To solve the mystery of Arjun's failure, we actually have to rewind thousands of years and look at something called cognitive bias. You see, our brains evolved to survive physical predators in the wild, not to navigate complex modern stock markets or intricate career decisions. Thousands of years ago, if our ancestors heard rustling in the bushes, assuming it was a predator was a fast, highly useful mental shortcut. Running away immediately kept them alive. Today, psychologists call these mental shortcuts cognitive biases. They're incredibly fast, they're completely automatic, but in our modern world, they are wildly misleading and can actively sabotage our logic. Let's look at how this plays out in Chapter 3, the overconfidence trap. Here's the kicker. The more knowledge we gain, the easier it becomes to believe we're immune to making mistakes. Imagine you've solved hundreds of incredibly difficult problems at work. After enough success, your brain quietly starts whispering a really dangerous phrase. You're usually right. And this creates the overconfidence trap, where your confidence grows so much faster than the actual evidence in front of you. Think of massive corporations laughing at new technologies, or the creators of the Titanic truly believing their ship was mathematically unsinkable. History is just littered with smart companies and brilliant leaders who believed they were totally unbeatable, right up until the exact moment they completely collapsed. That leads us to Chapter 4, confirmation bias. As Arjun's investments started to freefall, he didn't logically reevaluate his math. Instead, he subconsciously began filtering his reality. Whatever positive news about the investment popped up, his brain enthusiastically accepted it as an undeniable fact. But whenever negative news appeared, he aggressively dismissed it as exaggerated, false, or just market noise. This is confirmation bias in action. The human brain naturally craves certainty, so it aggressively prefers information that agrees with its existing beliefs while completely ignoring negative facts. It's exactly why two highly intelligent people can look at the exact same political debate or the same social media feed and walk away utterly convinced of two completely opposite realities.
Next up, Chapter 5, The Sunk Cost Fallacy.
So months had passed, and friends were practically begging Arjun to sell before his investment went to absolute zero. But Arjun replied, "I've already invested so much, I can't quit now." That sentence right there, that perfectly defines the sunk cost fallacy. Instead of looking logically at the future, the brain tries to justify the past. You see this in the business world all the time, like when governments poured billions into the failing Concorde jet project simply because they felt they had already spent way too much to back out. When you've poured money, time, or emotional energy into something, your brain just refuses to accept the loss, forcing you to double down on a truly terrible decision. It's exactly like sitting through a terrible movie. Halfway through, you know it's awful, but you stay just because you paid $20 for the ticket. The truth is, that money is already gone. Staying in the theater doesn't bring the money back. It just steals 2 hours of your time as well. This exact same psychological trap destroys investments, careers, and even long-term relationships. Sometimes the absolute smartest decision you can possibly make is simply cutting your losses and walking away.
Now for Chapter 6, Decision Fatigue.
There's another hidden, purely physical factor working against Arjun, and honestly, against all of us. And that's how our mental energy silently drains throughout the day. In the morning, your brain has high mental energy, allowing you to carefully evaluate complex problems. But by the afternoon, it begins looking for mental shortcuts. And by the evening, man, choosing something as simple as what to eat for dinner feels completely exhausting. Real-world studies have even shown that judges grant paroles significantly less often late in the day compared to the morning. Every single choice you make burns mental energy. When fatigued, your brain defaults to the absolute easiest option, which is exactly why you might hold on to a plummeting stock, just because the simple act of selling requires way too much mental friction.
This brings us to a major realization in Chapter 7, The Intelligence Trap. The crazy thing is, high intelligence does not automatically cure these cognitive biases. You literally cannot outthink the evolutionary wiring of your own brain just by having a high IQ. In fact, research suggests that intelligent people often fall into an even worse trap, known as motivated reasoning. Because they possess a high intellect, they don't use their brain power to find the objective truth. Instead, they use it to build highly sophisticated, incredibly complex arguments defending why they were right all along. Think of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the brilliant creator of Sherlock Holmes, who vehemently defended the existence of mythical fairies despite really obvious evidence to the contrary. Highly intelligent people often weaponize their own intellect just to protect their ego. Finally, Chapter 8, Breaking the Cycle.
Fortunately, Arjun eventually did accept his mistake. It definitely hurt his pride, but he sold the investment and learned a really vital lesson about second-order thinking. We can all bypass our brain's flawed shortcuts by taking 4 concrete steps. First, simply pause before acting to break that automatic response. Second, actively ask yourself, what specific evidence would actually change my mind? Third, purposefully seek out respectful opposing opinions. And fourth, if you're stuck, step back and imagine you are advising a close friend in the exact same situation. Removing yourself emotionally almost instantly clears the fog of bias. You have to remember, changing your mind when new evidence appears isn't a weakness. It isn't a failure at all. It's actually one of the strongest signs of good thinking and adaptability. Knowledge is undeniably powerful, but humility is the crucial ingredient that keeps that knowledge useful. Because without humility, high intelligence just becomes a faster, more efficient way to make a terrible mistake.
Being smart doesn't mean you'll never make bad decisions. It means you're willing to recognize them, adapt, and learn from them. The next time you are absolutely unequivocally certain that you are right about something, I want you to pause for just a moment, because your greatest strength might not be your intelligence at all. It might just be your willingness to question it. So take a look at your own life. What is one deeply held belief you have right now that you might be defending just because you're too smart to admit you're wrong? Think about it. Thanks for joining me on This Explainer, and I'll catch you next time.